This is my friend Mike. Mike is a fan of Power Rangers. Recently, a friend of his reached out to me and inquired if I'd be happy to answer some questions for him.
Hello, Mike. Well, it is a profound pleasure to meet you. I've been looking forward to answering your questions. I'm sorry it took so long. I've just been really busy. But I'm really very, very grateful for all of the interest that you've shown in the voice work that I do. And I'm looking forward to answering your questions. So let's see. The first question was, bear with me. What was your favorite impersonation or voiceover? Well, I would have to say it's kind of hard to answer because each voice that I do has something about it that I really like. But if I had to give you like an absolute favorite to date, I would say possibly Cosmo Royale. Cosmo was the first voice I did on Power Rangers that was like really fun. I mean, there were some previous voices that I enjoyed doing, but Cosmo was just kind of really goofy and he was a lot of fun, and he wasn't that taxing on my throat. You can imagine some of the monster voices that I do can be quite hard, and Cosmo was a lot easier. Although I did find out later in the series that if I had lots of dialogue, sometimes it was hard to sustain the voice. I'll tell you a quick little story about how I got the part. So that season, I had auditioned for Ninja Steel, and I was only being considered for the part of Ripcon. And I got called in to do, it's what's called a recall. It's like a second audition. And it generally means that they're interested in maybe hiring you for the part, but they just want to make sure. So I went in for my recall, and I did the recall for Ripcon. And as I was coming out, the producer of the show, he was very complimentary. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he said, "Can you do Charlie in the Box?" Now, that's a reference probably before your time. Charlie in the Box is a character from a 1960s animation called Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. And Charlie in the Box was a kind of broken misfit toy because he's supposed to be a Jack in the Box, but he's called Charlie in the Box. So no child wanted him as a toy. And I was familiar with the voice because I used to watch the cartoon every year when I was growing up as a child. So I was kind of familiar with the voice, and he said, "Can you do Charlie in the Box?" And so I sort of did the voice. I said something like, "Nobody wants a Charlie in the Box." So the producer suddenly said, "I want you to audition for Cosmo." And I was like, wow, cool. So I went into the booth, and because Charlie in the Box is kind of a sad character, I gave him a little bit more whimsy and made him a little bit more like the Mad Hatter from Alice in Wonderland, and that's how Cosmo came into existence. So thank you for asking that question. I love doing the voice of Cosmo, but I do enjoy some of the other voices as well. I do like doing Snide, and it's taken a while, but I have grown to really enjoy doing Scrozzle. So let's check out your next question. How did you end up at the University of Louisville? Well, good question. I had lived in Louisville for a few years as a child, and then moved away, and then by complete coincidence, kind of moved back, and I was in the Louisville area for a number of years by the time I finished high school, and so it just made sense for me to go to the University of Louisville. And a lot of memories there, a few adventures, a little mischief. I studied theater, and I got a theater degree while I was there. And I would say the biggest thing I learned while I was getting my degree at U of L was I learned all about comedy. There's some people that are born funny, and then there are those that have to learn how to be funny. And I fall into the other camp. I had to learn how to be funny. So, I learned a lot about comedy and did a lot of plays, and just a lot of memories at U of L. Go Cards. Let's look at your next question. It says, how are you able to do so many voices? How do you create each voice? How did you learn, and how do you practice? Well, I'm not really sure if there's a satisfactory answer in that. I don't really know how I'm able to do so many voices. I just do them. The simple answer is I just can. Now that doesn't mean I can do any voice I want. What I generally try to do is in kind of building a repertoire and expanding, the voices that I can do. Very often, like if I watch an animation or I watch something and a voice stands out to me, I'll see if I can mimic that voice. And sometimes I can, and sometimes I can't. Let's see. I remember my voice agent. She periodically calls me and she asks, can you do a certain kind of voice for this or a certain kind of voice for that? Like a client will call her and say, we're doing a commercial and we need someone to be able to imitate this actor or Clint Eastwood or whatever. And there have been a few times where I've been able to mimic certain existing actors or characters. And then there was one time where she called me up and she said, can you do Samuel L. Jackson? And I thought, oh yeah, maybe I can do that. And I recorded something and no. I failed miserably. I cannot do Samuel L. Jackson. But there's I like to think there's a few celebrities and well-known characters out there in cartoons and animations that I can mimic pretty well. When I try to create a voice, what I like to do is I like to see what the character looks like. If I can see, how he's drawn or what the character, embodies, that will usually go a long way to me helping me find the voice. If I don't know what a character looks like in advance, that makes it really hard for me to try and come up with a voice. Usually 90 to 95% of the time, the moment I see what a character looks like, I can usually come up with something, to present or offer. Now, it may not get cast, it may not be right for the character, but most of the time, if I can see what the character looks like, I can find a voice for it. On rare exception, I have difficulty finding a voice, and there are not a lot of people that know this story, but classic example is with Scrozzle this past season. It was the day of my audition, and literally, I had nothing for the character. I just had so much trouble coming up with a voice for him, and I knew what he looked like. So I was starting to panic a bit because, my audition was in half an hour, and I didn't have anything to present. So I just kind of like reached deep inside me and just yanked something out, and that ended up being the voice that I offered at the audition, which then got cast for Scrozzle. So, but that's the exception to the rule, and hopefully it doesn't happen again. Your next question, your next two questions are kind of very similar. They're almost like opposite sides of the same coin. So I'll probably merge them together. So, how did you get this awesome job of voiceovers? How do you get your voice recording onto the actual show? Well, when I was starting out and I was trying to become a voice actor, it's kind of like it's a double-edged sword. Like, sometimes you can't get an agent until you've actually done a job, but you can't always get a job unless you have an agent. So the trick is to try and find other things that you can do that don't necessarily require you having an agent. Like I remember I contacted a local radio station and I said, hey, look, if use me to record some of your in-house commercials, I'll do it for free, and you just give me a copy of the finished work for my showreel. And so a few years went by, and I didn't have an agent. And then in this particular case, my particular case, what happened was I was with an acting agency at the time, and the casting director for Power Rangers, who would normally have gone to, like, say, a voice agent, contacted my acting agent. He said, "Do you have any American actors there?" And my agent at the time said, "Yeah, we do. We've got this one guy." And so I got called in to audition for Power Rangers, and it was for our Power Rangers SPD, Space Patrol Delta. And I, amazingly, I got the part. It was the role of Tomar's. And as a result, I guess they liked what I did, and they just kept bringing me back. And I just kind of grew from there. It was like lots of guest monsters for episodes, and then in the course of time, it kind of grew into like more ongoing monsters like Abrami, and then subsequently, I just kind of ended up doing more and more kind of ongoing monsters. There have been a few voices that weren't monsters, like the Dinomorph Charger in Dino Charge, where they put the batteries in, and then you hear like T-Rex Charger, engage! So that sort of thing. And then I was also fortunate enough to be able to voice an episode with Alpha 6 in Operation Overdrive. And I think I did a few other little things, and I was in an episode, it was a walk-on part in Dino Charge. I played a paparazzi. But anyway, I'm getting away from the original question. So, it's just, it's an interesting field. I never thought that I would have ended up where I am today. But I do enjoy it. It's a lot of hard work, and I just hope that I'm fortunate enough to continue doing more voice jobs in the future. I hope that answers your questions, and I just want to thank you so much for your interest, and thank you for your questions. It's a real pleasure to meet you, Mike, and maybe one day we'll get to meet in person. But until then, thank you so much for your interest and devotion, and I look forward to chatting again at some point in the future. Take care.